Hey guys, welcome back to Master Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and today we're going over a requested video from many of our viewers. We're going to go over secondaries for the Tyranids in the new chapter approved 2022, technically the Nachmund Grand Tournament pack, but they have shifted the Tyranids choices in secondaries, and with that brings changes to how we construct our list as Tyranid players. So I'm going to go through how I pick my secondaries, how I rank the secondaries, and where we want to go from there, in terms of which ones are ones to work towards and which ones probably want to stay away from in the grand scheme of things for 40k. If that sounds good to you, please consider liking and subscribing to stay up to date on all the content we do here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios. As well, if you want to support the growth of this channel, do consider becoming a member. Click that little join button. It will give you access to our member exclusive Discord channel, as long as member exclusive videos and other goodies like that. Now, with all that out of the way, let's dive into today's video. Like I said in the intro today, we're going to go over my general thoughts on secondaries today. I will then be ranking the secondaries, at least in my opinion, on how I play them for a Tyranid player. Again, these could have different rankings from other armies if you are not a Tyranid player watching this, but as a Tyranid player, mainly, I will rank a lot of these. I also do think, though, a lot of these work and fit for most armies in 40k, just kind of the balance power of secondaries in the current state. And then, once that's all done, I'm going to wrap it up with a little bit of conclusion on my take on the secondaries. Again, it'll be a bit more from a Tyranid's perspective, but it should work in general for anyone playing any army. So the first overview on the secondaries. Secondaries are a key portion to your game. They are 45% if you're counting the 10 points of painting, 45% of your potential points. So it's a big deal. If you do killer on the primaries but absolute crappy on your secondaries, you're probably not going to win unless you somehow manage to stomp your opponent into the dust. Now, some important factors in list construction. I like to build my lists with secondaries in mind. First, when I am building a list, I will start working on a list, and then once I have the first draft, as I like to call it, for the list, I will look at what secondaries can I take with this, and from there, I will make tweaks. Maybe like, okay, I don't have enough infantry to do raise the banners, or I don't have enough infantry or enough units to do, I don't know, the psychic interrogation or mental interrogation, things like that. I will adjust my list to make sure I have a decent list of secondaries to choose from when I go to play my opponent. It is one thing to build a powerful list, but you do, like I said, have to play the secondaries. There's also some things you can consider when planning. Tyranids specifically have two rules that allow you to not work around secondaries, but work with secondaries. So the first one example is the Void Crown for the Tyranids. It is a relic that allows you to do a psychic action and still cast a single psychic power, and then rolls of a 9+ cannot be denied. Perfect for a Neurothrope if you want to have him running around, or it could be good on a Broodlord, and maybe even a Hive Tyrant if you want to. But if you want to tailor your list to completing one of those psychic secondaries, Void Crown is a very good option for you there. Another example, most armies in 9th edition codexes, even though we're not 9th edition codex yet, but most armies have a stratagem or a rule of some sort of function like this. And for us, Tyranid players, is Hive Mind Imperative. For 1 CP, an infantry unit can still do an action and shoot in the same turn. So, two units that immediately come to mind for this are our Hive Guard and our Tyranid Warriors. Both of them will probably be wanting to sit on objectives. Your Hive Guard are definitely going to want to shoot, but they want to stay in your backfield. Perfect if you are doing a mission-specific action, like some of the new ones have like Aspect Scan or something where you have to do an action on your home objective. Raise the Banners is one that comes to mind. If you are going for something like Retrieve Nachmund data, or maybe you're doing an Investigate Signal something, your Warriors are probably going to be the ones doing that, so now they can still shoot because they do have some decent shooting potential if you kit them out properly. So again, the CP could go a long way for doing your secondaries. Now we'll go over the ranking of how I say these secondaries are going to work. The categories that I have broken these up to are the ones I almost never ever take, and if I do take them, I normally regret it every time. The niche and okay choices. These ones are going to be, generally I wouldn't recommend them, but if you tailor your list specifically to completing them, they do have some potential. Then there are the good choices. These are mainly your top ones. These mostly all of my secondary picks are from the good choices. But then we have one I will say is an almost auto pick, and we'll talk on that one at the very end too. So starting off with my almost never take ones. First off is from the Warpcraft section, we have Pierce the Veil. You have to do completing psychic actions within 6 inches of your opponent's deployment zone. You also cannot be within 6 inches of an enemy unit. You have to do this many times in order to get maximum points. I believe you have to do it four or 6 times to get maximum points. But when are Tyranids going to have a Psyker, or almost any army besides maybe Eldar and Grey Knights, going to have a Psyker within 6 inches of your opponent's backfield? And not just one, but multiple. So never touch that one. If you do, okay, cool, but I just never do it. Shadow operations, deploy teleport homers. That's for some reason hard for me to say. This is very similar to Pierce the Veil. Instead of doing psychic action, you're doing a normal action in your opponent's deployment zone. If you're a troop choice, it's easier to achieve, but still, you have to be in your opponent's deployment zone. You have to do it multiple times, and it's a lot of potential throwaway units that you're having to use in order to achieve very little or tricky rewards. So I definitely stay away from this one. And another one a lot of armies do use, I don't. I do not like it, is No Mercy, No Respite. Specifically from a Tyranid perspective, our most expensive units are typically Swarmlord, a Hero Duel, and a unit of Hive Guards are typically our 3 most expensive units we're bringing to a battle. Now Hive Guard may stay alive and get you 5 points, whoop-de-doo, but your opponent is going to try to do everything they can to take down those 5 Hive Guard. Swarmlord normally puts him in harm's way every game, so he is not a guarantee to stay alive. And your Hero Duels are also probably being shot at your opponent, unless it's a barbed one that he may. But still, all those units, being the most expensive, are also the #1 targets. So it's always, for me, it's a win more, or you lose more. So if you take it and you're gonna win the game, you're winning the game because those units are still alive and they're doing damage, meaning the secondary just exponentially grows your victory points. If you're losing, you're probably losing because these key units are dying and you're already just going to lose that much harder. So some other armies, if you have individual characters you can protect and do it, or individual units, something, I could see it. Maybe if you're playing a lot of Hive Guard, but still I like to stay away from this one. So now some of the niche okay choices. Those are the only 3 bad ones I have. First one, Abhor the Witch. I put this in the niche one because as Tyranid players, we almost never have no Psykers. And if you do, you're running a weird all Gene Stealer Tyranid warrior list, which you could. But if your opponent has enough Psykers to go after, maybe it's an option. I don't think so. For non-Tyranid players, Abhor the Witch is a great one. Definitely if you're going against the Grey Knights, Thousand Suns, even Tyranids. Abhor the Witch is an awesome power, but as a Tyranid player, this is one I don't touch too much. Shadow operations, there are 2 of them. We have Investigate Signals and Retrieve Nachman Data, both of them who have seen changes in the new pack. For Investigate Signals, you have to do an action within 6 inches of the center. You need at least 3 models in that infantry unit. If they're troop choice, it can be done immediately. It's fine. But you have to do it, in order to max it out, you have to do it every single turn, which means you have to have an infantry unit in the center of your board every single turn. So turn 1, you need something fast like Raveners or Gargoyles in order to pull that off. You could use Metabolic Overdrive and get a unit up there too. Not a horrible shout for a CP, but it's something. But again, that's only 3 units. Then if you have, I don't know, something else that's got to stick through your opponent, will be going after. It could be good if there is a mission where the center objective, or the center of the board is also an objective. I think 1/3 of the missions, it is laid out that way, where the center of the board is also an objective. If that's the case, it puts that much pressure on taking the middle. You could focus all your forces there. Is it worth it for the 15 victory points here? Maybe, but that's why I'm calling it a niche choice, because you are going to seriously be tailoring your army to achieve this one. Knockwind data, I think, is also niche. You have to really tailor your army in order to do it. It's also only 12 victory points that you can get for pulling it off, and now it is not nearly as reliable for Tyranid players and for everyone else, but specifically Tyranid players. We're going to have to stick to Raveners, Warriors, Gargoyles in order to pull this one off, and I just don't see most people dedicating a lot of points to going for this action. They'd much rather just go for something like using those units for engaging all fronts and something like that, and making this a much more, going for a much more easier option than this one. Still, can be doable. I just think you have to tailor your list a lot in order to pull this one off reliably every game. Battlefield Supremacy also has one, behind enemy lines. Score 2 to 4 victory points for having 1 to 2 units in your enemy's deployment zone at the end of the turn. Again, it can be done if you are a fast unit with deep striking. Bringing in a unit with a lictor can immediately get you those 4 victory points in your enemy's deployment zone. So it is a possibility, but you have to do that for 4 turns of your 5-turn game to have 2 units. So maybe you could pull it off. Again, I think there is a bit of list tailoring you have to do in order to pull this one off. But if you do, it is a potential one. But still, it's an okay niche choice. We have many more. As you can see, a lot of them fit in this niche category, but that is what it is. For No Mercy, No Respite, I have 2 options in here. No Prisoners, you get victory points for killing non-character infantry. I think, even though it has been buffed in the recent chapter approved book, I still don't think it is a great one to take unless your opponent is playing a swarm and you can see maybe there's a potential max of 17 points or something that you could get. So now you don't have to table your opponent in order to get this. Like when I said earlier, this is very much a win-win-more type of scenario. So if you have tabled them, you probably are already going to win the game, and you don't necessarily need these victory points to win the game. That's my take on it. So maybe you're playing a Green Tide or a Tyranid Swarm or a Kroot Horde, Imperial Guards Horde, something like that. Yeah. For us Tyranid players specifically, Synaptic Insights is our new chapter-proof specific secondary. It is killing units with synapse creatures for a max of 12 points. Now I've used this one twice just to really test it in 2 games, different ways of doing it. And I found that it is harder to complete than it seems. It seems really easy, but you have to go very heavy synapse. So you're thinking, Trigon Prime, multiple Hive Tyrant Swarm Lord, maybe a Maleceptor, Zoanthropes. It's a lot of work and a lot of synapse points, where things that are going to be doing the damage are some of your non-synapse monsters like your Harusfax, your Hieroduals, your big Hierophant and Harridan if you're bringing those ones along. Tyrannofexes, they're all non-synapse. And you could say, oh, I'll pay the 1 command point for an adaptive physiology to make him a synapse creature. You're just not gaining a lot. You're more so wasting an adaptive physiology. So I think it's a lot harder to complete, and even if you do max it out, put all the work in, it's only 12 points. There are other killy ones that could get you more than 12 points. So I put in the niche one because you could max it out, but it's not as easy as some other ones. Purge the Enemy also has 2 of them as well. Assassination is 3 victory points for killing characters. You get a 4th victory point if they are the Warlord. So typically a 3-character army will get you, if you kill all the characters, that's 10 points. If they have more, then more. Now the problem I have with this one is that unless they're playing Genestealer Cult, where they have, 10 characters in the army, that's an auto take against Genius Cult. Most armies have, like I said, 3 characters, maybe 4 or 5 on the high side, or 1 or 2 on the low side. If they're smart and they know you're taking Assassinate, they're going to keep some of those characters. Maybe they got a couple fighty ones, a couple support. They're going to do everything they can to protect those characters because it helps them win the game even more in the long run. So it's more of a mind game. If they take it, they have to play differently. But if they're smart, they can probably play it well enough to prevent you from getting 6 points. Let's say your max you could only get was maybe 13. Now you're down to 7. It's just not, I don't think, 7's on the low side for Secondaries when I'm considering it, unless you're playing Gene Stealer Cult. Titan Hunter, again, this is a big one. It really is only if you're playing Chaos Knights or Imperial Knights. If you think your army's good enough to do it, great, go for it. Last time I played Knights, I didn't think I could do it. I did wish I took it because I ended up killing the 3 Knights, which would have maxed it out, but I just threw it in here because it is niche. Not every Tyranid army can just walk through Knights, especially if you're not playing Crusher Stampede. So it's down there. It could be a good choice if you're playing them, but if not, no reason to really take it. Now going to the good choices. Again, these ones are ones I typically consider on a regular basis when making my list and picking them at the start of the game. For Warpcraft, we have 2 options, Warp Ritual and Psychic Interrogation. I do really like both of these. And again, that Void Crown Relic that I mentioned for Tyranid players is very good at helping us make this even more possible. So you can go for the higher risk, high reward, or the lower risk, lower reward option. So Warp Ritual is doing the psychic action within 12 inches or 6 inches of the center. You have to do it wholly within 6 inches of the center. So if you're running, big Turvagun, you got to wedge it in there to get them. It only takes 3 turns to do it. So if you have something fast like a Hive Tyrant and you want to risk it turn 1 to throw the Hive Tyrant in there, turn 1, boom, done. Okay, now turn 2, or turn 3, or turn 4, turn 5, or turn 1, 2, and 5. 12 victory points. You do get, if you only do it twice, you'll get 8. And if you do it once, you get 3. So it's not an all or nothing like it used to be. But that's the lower reward. It is only 12 points maximum. Depending on the mission layout, the game, you might see it. If it's not a mission where the center objective is a secondary or is a primary point, then you might see an easier time completing it, but also you're putting your forces in a place that's not maybe crucial for the battlefield. It could go up, and I do like it, and I have typically used it a lot and pulled it off a lot. Like I said, the Flying Hive Tyrant can do it in 1 turn, a Neurothrope with a Void Crown can do it the other 2 turns, or the Neurothrope with a Void Crown can do it all 3 turns. The one I like a little bit better, because it is easier, I think, to pull off than this one, you have a little more flexibility with it, is Psychic Interrogation. So you get 3 victory points for completing a psychic action within 24 inches of an enemy character. Now what's great about this one is that they changed it so you no longer need a line of sight, so your opponent cannot just hide their characters and you can't do it. 24 inches, if you have a Flying Hive Tyrant with a Void Crown or without a Void Crown, 24 inches, he could probably be in range of a character turn 1. If not, turn 2, 3, 4, 5, every other turn, he should be in range of a character. You can do it on the same character over and over and over. So even if they only have the 1 character, just keep doing it on the same character. One thing to watch out for this one is that if they only have 1 or 2 characters, it might be tricky to pull off, because if they're fighty characters, they might send them out quick, because if those characters die, you can't do it anymore. So I've had that happen to me where my opponent realized, hey, I need to kill my own character in order to prevent me from scoring victory points, and he sent them at me, forcing me to kill him, and then that prevented me from getting another 6 victory points for the rest of the game. I like it. I think it's one of my more favorite, more go-to ones, especially because of the Void Crown Relic and the mobility Tyranids have. And also, any Psyker can do it. It doesn't have to be with the Void Crown. So if you take Psychic heavy armies like I do, you can probably spare 1 Psyker per turn in order to just cast this simple power. Finally, not finally, but on the next good choices one, raise the banners. Very niche on this one, but it is good if you can pull it off. Some of the objectives that have, or some of the missions that have 6 objectives, there are 2 of them, I believe. Maybe it's 3. 2 of them where you have 2 objectives within reach of your deployment zone, if not 3 objectives within reach of your deployment zone or in your deployment zone. If you play those objectives, raise the banners is an easy one to take because turn 1, you move out, every unit can do that action. So turn 1, you could have 3 banners up or at least 2 banners up. And then it's all just about protecting those banners and protecting those objectives. If you keep those objectives protected and held under your control, do it to 3 objectives for the whole game, that's a max 15 points. Sure, this one I think is difficult to max out 15 points on, but I think it is easier to get 10 points on this one than it is for some of the other ones. So in those niche missions, maybe this one should have gone in the niche okay choices, but in the missions of 6 objectives and you're within range of 2 or 3 of them, I think this is a great one to choose. Few more good choices. Under Purge the Enemy, I like Grind Them Down a lot, and Bring It Down can also be potential. Grind Them Down is a tricky one to say if you're gonna take it. You have to kind of have a good knowledge of your army, but more importantly, your opponent's army. What are you reliably going to kill and what are they reliably going to kill of your army? Can you take it so maybe 3 or 4 turns you can kill more than them? If you think you have that narrowed down in your head, it's a great one because really you don't have to do anything extra. You're just killing models as you already would be doing. So if you do it better than your opponent, great. And it doesn't have to be crazy better. You do have to think about, you know, I don't want to table them turn 1 because then I cannot score Grind Them Down for the rest of the game. You got to be very careful and just kill maybe 2 or 3 extra units. This is also a good one, not that you can predict it, but if you're going second, this is really good because you know how much your opponent has killed in order to know how much you have to kill or how much you have to stop if your opponent's taken it. So I like Grind Them Down. Bring It Down has gotten easier, so which is why I moved this up to a good choice. If your opponent is playing transport heavy, vehicle heavy, monster heavy, it is pretty easy to get the 10 points if they're vehicle heavy. If they're not, you don't think you can even get close to 15 points, don't even touch it. But with the changes to making transports count as 2 points and bigger monsters and maybe some vehicles counting as 3 points, it's a lot easier of one to go for than it used to be in the past. Finally, on the good choices, we have classic engage in all fronts. You have to have units in the quarters, not being 6 inches within the centers, and you get 2 or 3 victory points. 2 if you have 3 quarters, 4 if you have units in all 4 quarters. We do have to have a unit of 3 infantry, or I should say 3 models, non-vehicle and monster. Vehicle or monsters can be in it by themselves and still hold it. That's something I totally forgot about last time I played a game. Vehicles and monsters can hold on their own. So you're playing Crush Your Stampede. This is a great one to take because just 1 monster in a quarter is guaranteed the points, and a unit of 3 warriors can also guarantee your other points. Perfect for that one. I should say before we move on, I find that I can typically score 10, 12 points on this one a game. 15, maybe, rarely. If you've got the mobility with Harpies, then yes, you can do it. And with Swarm Lord, yes, you can do it. But I find for me, it's a much more 10 to 13 point one that I can do, which is great for secondaries. Finally, we have one more, and this is what I'm calling an almost auto-include. This is a secondary that if you figured it out, well, now you can see it. It's Stranglehold. This is one in the early days of 2021, really I didn't like this one at all. I was not keen on it being a secondary take, but the more I've taken it, the more I've learned to play with it. It seems almost like a no-brainer not to take it if your mission aligns with it. So the missions at 2,000 points are either 5 objectives or 5 or 6 objectives. If you're playing a 6 objective game, this is absolutely an auto take. If you're playing a 5 objective game, It's a little more iffy depending on how aggressive your army is, how well you think you can steal objectives. But with 6 objectives, you have to hold half the objectives, which is, it's fair to do. With some of those objectives, you can be holding them, count as holding them, but not be on them. There's at least one mission that does that, so that's even easier. But yeah, so you have to be on half the objectives and just force your opponent off of one of their 3 objectives. You do that, bam, you get the 3 points. The best part about it is that you're already fighting for those 3 points in order to score the primary. So again, similar to like I said with grind them down, you're not doing anything extra when you're playing this because you're already fighting to be on 3 objectives and more than your opponent. You're basically giving yourself an extra 3 points towards your primary at the end of the game, or at the end of the turn. I really like this one. It has warmed up to me very well, especially in the 6 objectives games, and that is why I call it an auto-include, basically, for those reasons. So now I'll just wrap up in a little bit of a conclusion here. There are many, many secondaries, as I just listed all of them out in a short description, but hopefully it was useful for you. Pick a few when you're doing it, base it on these 3 things. Now maybe this is pretty obvious to some of you, but for new players, secondaries is just a whole nother element that you have to process, and maybe this little checklist can go over it. So look at what your army can do. What secondaries do you think you have the capabilities of doing? Try and pick at least one based on that. Look at what your opponent's army can do. Are they going to be fast and mobile? Are they going to be trying to swarm you off the objectives? What is that? Maybe that will help you decide what another one can do. Maybe they're very vehicle heavy. Maybe you want to bring it down. Maybe they are knights, Titanic. Maybe they're Gene Stealer Cult and they have all characters everywhere, assassination. So pick one based on your army, pick one based on your opponent's army, and then look at the mission. Is it a 5 objective game with only 1 in your deployment zone? Probably don't want to raise the banners. Is it a 6 objective game where you have 2 in your deployment zone? Raise the banners, and stranglehold, things like that. So maybe in your own time, make a list. I've done this when I've gone to tournaments. I make a checklist. I look at what my army, the one that my army is designed to do, and I write it down. And then I say, because in most tournaments, they tell you the missions ahead of time. So I can look at the missions like, okay, based on the mission, I will take either this or this, take the mission, take that one based on it, done. And that means when I get to the tournament and I look at my opponent, just quickly look over my 2 pre-selected choices. I'm like, okay, those still make sense. And then I have the whole, deciding secondaries time to just look at what my opponent has to bring and decide my 3rd secondary based on that. So that's how I do that. Ones I do typically go with. So like I said, Stranglehold and Engage in All Fronts are I always will pick one of those 2 depending on the mission and the deployment. Stranglehold has been the one that's been winning recently for me, but also I've been playing more 6 objective games to practice on those ones because those are the hardest ones in my opinion on tournaments for scoring wise. So doing that one. Raise the Banners is also one, again, playing 6 objective games that's been a little bit more in my head recently, but it is dependent on the mission and how you can do it. Mental Interrogation and Psychic Ritual. Look at the number of psychers you have, look at the number of characters your opponent has. Do you want to go for Psychic Ritual because they don't have many characters and it's going to be a little iffy? Or are they abundant in characters and you want to read the brains of all of them? Then maybe go for the Mental Interrogation. Or maybe they have a huge Death Star that you know is going to walk towards the center of the board and you want nothing to do with that, so you maybe just don't bother with Psychic Ritual at all. And then for my last option, the Killy option, Grind is my default one. I will default to all right, I'll pick that one, but then I will check my opponent's list. I'll see if one of the other Killy options makes more sense for me, but typically Grind is one of them I am going to go with. I've tried to do other ones as the Tyranids, and unless they have a lot of characters or something, I typically think, shoot, at the end of the game, I should have taken Grind instead of this one. But yeah, so that's how that scores for me. I'm looking over at the side of the game I just played. I'm looking at my secondaries. After 4 turns, I got 12 points on Strangle, 10 points on Banners, and 9 points on Assassinate. So if it was an 86 to 74 game, pretty good one. That will not be a battle report, sorry guys. That was just a practice game for Calvin playing his Thousand Suns. Hopefully in the future, once he gets his army painted and ready for 2,000 points, then we will have that ready for you guys on the channel. But it was a great game. Fortunate it wasn't being recorded. So I guess that's pretty much the video. Sorry, a little tangent there. What do you guys think of secondaries? Unfortunately, we did have a major shakeup with how we pick secondaries because of our lictors. Sadly, we're taken out of contention for being able to do most of them. Maybe a unit of lictors, that doesn't make any sense, but I don't know. Lictors still do have some potential, but really maybe you don't want to focus on them, I should say. So what do you guys think? Did you agree with a lot of my analysis on the secondaries? Do you have another method for picking secondaries? Let us know in the comments. A lot of new players might be checking out this video, so if you have some experience at playing tournaments, picking your secondaries, let us know what you think. Maybe you've got some totally different way that works for you. I might learn something from it. Secondaries are always one of the hardest things, I think, in 40k right now. Two of them, picking two secondaries is always easy. But if you can pick that third secondary and achieve it, that separates you from the okay middle of the pack to contending for top tables and top of the tournament sort of play style. So that's all I have here for you guys today. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time here at Maelstrom Game Studios.